Okay, so I'm going to take a moment to talk with you a little bit about the role of the Dean of Students Office here on campus. And it's important for you to know what we do here in the Dean of Students Office, just because you may not necessarily have a need to connect in with us, but there are definitely a lot of services that we provide, not only when it relates to the student code of conduct or academic integrity, but then also as our students experience different levels of boundary, crisis, whatever it might be, in their period of time that they're here at the university. It's important they know that there's support systems in place. So again, the title here is Partner, Support, Assist, and Engage, because the reality is we don't ever really know what to expect in the time that you're here at the University of Arizona, but it's important that you do know who can help you should you experience any unexpected events in your time here. So that being said, primarily our role is with students. We are the Dean of Students Office, so students are at the heart of all that we do. But of course, we have to support our faculty who are engaged with students both in and outside of the classroom, staff who help all of our students towards their graduation. And in some cases, parents are still very engaged with their students, or there may be some emergencies where parents are in contact with our office so that we make sure there's not a discontinuation of academic success for their students. And I'm sure you're all aware, with the University of Arizona being in the heart of the Tucson community, we have a role that we play not only with our campus community, but then also with the surrounding Tucson community. And if you were to look at what the mission of a Dean of Students Office is on any campus, health and safety are going to be at the primary core of what we do. And we obviously can't do that alone, because most folks think of health and they think of, medical practitioners. And obviously we have our colleagues over at Campus Health and Counseling and Psych Services that work with us quite regularly. And then also obviously our University Police Department comes into consideration. But again, when you're seeing a doctor or you're dealing with the police, again, you're at a different level of potential crisis, criminal activity, or health concern, whereas we're trying to be that proactive step, that intervention, before there might be engagement of those two individuals, those two sets of individuals. So we do focus a lot on the education and response to policy issues. Obviously, you will know there are a lot of different activities that take place on a college campus. We are a place, and we'll talk more about First Amendment, but a place that folks like to take advantage of because we are an easy location for First Amendment expression, whether that be in the form of a protest, demonstration. And we also have services in place where we are able to handle those events. We deal with large-scale events on a regular basis, and we have First Amendment monitors who can assist community as well as campus partners when they're having a controversial speaker, a protest, a demonstration. In addition, we have to respond to anything that's happening, like as it comes up. So office often gets calls anytime there's media sources of concern related to our campus, whether that's about the COVID reentry plan, whether that's about the protests that have happened of late, perhaps it's about the police interaction with students. Whatever is the most current and relevant issue facing our college campus or our community at large, oftentimes our office is part of that response. And then obviously, at the core of it all is providing the resources our students need to get through their campus experience. And I put this slide up here because in recent months, we were able to meet with some folks who do risk management on college campuses. And it was kind of a conversation about what are the things that we are thinking about on a regular basis. And after looking at that list, and I think that presentation was probably a week prior to our closure of campus for COVID-19. And so it's interesting to look at this because even persistent with everything that we were thinking in March, this is a typical day in our office. I put all of these in no particular order at the time that I first came up with the list, but looking at it in reference to this particular presentation, quite honestly, I think for most folks, COVID-19 would be perhaps top of the list. But the reality is that suicide ideation and prevention are often at the core of our concern here, because we really need to make sure that we're normalizing the conversation related to all of the different mental health concerns our students face, but knowing that suicide ideation is one of the most persistent reasons that we see students on our behavioral intervention team. So always thinking about it, thinking about practices we have, not only for prevention, but also for education on how folks respond to individuals who are having a mental health concern, especially when it comes to the potential of self-harm. So again, mental health, very critical for us on campus. And bias incidents, you're all aware, we are dealing with a very intense time in our country. There doesn't seem to be much middle ground in terms of where folks stand on many issues. So what we often are seeing now in relation to recent events in our country, we're seeing a lot of response to what folks are seeing as bias, whether it's on social media, flyers they see around town, interactions they're having with individuals. We are one of the repositories for those concerns, whether they're coming from the outside community, within the community, our police department, our city, our state. Those concerns come to our office so that we can then determine whether or not there are individuals involved in a particular bias concern that might lead to an adjudication through the code of conduct, or if it's a larger scale impact on part of our community, so that we can then be responsive to their needs and help with whatever impact that's having, and also hopefully moving the institution forward towards better practices to prevent that level of impact on our student body moving forward. And with that, I want to just say, and I'll bring it up a little bit more later in the presentation, but bias incidents, oftentimes there's this intersection of bias incidents, perceived bias, real bias, however one would define it, and the First Amendment, because a lot of what's being reported to us is happening on social media. And as you progress through your time in the College of Law, obviously you'll spend some time talking about First Amendment. There's also the purpose of the code of conduct, in particular for the Dean of Students Office. We're always looking for a nexus to campus. So there's the student and how they portray themselves as a university student, and then there's their behaviors within the community, online, where their First Amendment rights begin and end. And also reputational damage, while it's something that a lot of folks are concerned about because we're a values-based institution, the code of conduct isn't based on our institutional values, it's based on ABOR's policy, which defines the code of conduct at ASU, NAU, and U of A. And so again, we're looking at rule-based reasoning to determine if what's being expressed is direct and threatening, harassing, and then how we might apply that to code of conduct, or if it's conversation that might be protected by the First Amendment. So there's a lot of conversation on our part when things are reported related to whether there's a nexus to campus. But in addition to that, we also always focus on the care of the individuals impacted, because we have had just such a broad range of issues that we've been facing, even just since March. And I think a lot of our students are wounded and feeling as if it's hard to know where to begin. And so we have to be part of that dialogue, as well as helping shape how we dismantle institutional oppression moving forward here at the U of A. And along with that, I think that the efforts that we've made in terms of trying to meet the needs of students, even during COVID-19, having an emergency fund, in an effort to meet students in a place where that financial insecurity that they're facing, whether it's sudden because of COVID-19 or it's been a growing concern, hopefully we're able to give some amount of money, whether it's through donor funds or the CARES Act that was infused with federal dollars, to help students keep going, because we will get through the COVID-19 pandemic, but it's going to be a long road, and so we need to be part of that recovery. But housing insecurity and food insecurity existed prior to COVID-19. There's certainly going to be a concern moving forward, and perhaps even on a significantly larger scale. And so how do we make sure that our students aren't disrupted during this period of time and are able to continue to succeed? So while that's been a concern through our food pantry, our student governance here in the Associated Students of U of A, they've been working to make sure that that pantry has sustainable dollars to keep itself going. They've remained open. And then we're continuing to look into how we then address housing insecurity, how we move forward with growing our programs around food insecurity, but also in career development for those folks who struggle even to perhaps find adequate wardrobe or what it might be to get to their next step in their career. So trying to make sure we meet that need. And then also we see obviously a lot of behavioral concerns because we are the Dean of Students Office, but some of the elements that you may not recognize that we would be working on, we do a lot of work with our campus health partners, understanding what current trends are and what's relevant in the world of students, experimentation with drugs or alcohol, understanding what perhaps dirty substances, substance abuse issues, what's coming up so that we can appropriately, again, use our educational opportunities to move students towards understanding the impact of their choices. But along with monitoring such behaviors, we also obviously have threatening, disruptive behavior. We have domestic violence among individuals, whether they're one affiliated, one student who perhaps isn't, one individual who's not affiliated, regardless of whether both individuals involved in a domestic violence situation are affiliated or not. Those are areas where our influence and our concern is sometimes difficult to navigate because, again, when there's relationship violence, it is really dependent on the individuals involved wanting our assistance in order for us to really have an impact. So these are just, a long list of all the things that are on our mind on a regular basis, probably things that we're addressing at least in some part each day here in the Dean of Students Office. But more recently, obviously with folks re-entering to campus, concerns related to the COVID-19, spread on campus, spread within the community, mask compliance, even in intersection with First Amendment, because we have had a number of large-scale protests over the summer here on campus where there has been mask compliance. Folks have been handing out masks. Folks have been, taking advantage of handing out hand sanitizer, a variety of things, and we've seen great success with those folks remaining healthy throughout this period of time since those protests began. But we have to think about all of those things, controversial speakers. We have a national election coming up. That would normally be something that we would be considering how we get ahead of that. How do we make sure that we keep the campus safe during what could be a divisive period of time? The reality is we're dealing with division over division over division, and so the national election is just one of the many things that we have to take into consideration for the fall semester. So the whole point of sharing that list was just to let you know that most of what we do in our office involves some level of conflict or some level of crisis for our students. So if ever you find yourself in conflict or in crisis, if nothing else, if you don't remember all of the other things that we do, my hope is that you will at least remember that we can be a support system for you in that crisis or that conflict. And how we engage with it is really up to the student in terms of what they share. And of course, we're mandatory reporters. So if things come across our threshold that require reporting to law enforcement or require an investigation on our part, we will let you know that when you walk in our door. But just know, we are a landing spot for you when you get into those tough situations. And since I'm recording this is a hard thing for me to do with you, but I want to just have you all, I'll read through this and then perhaps you can, after viewing this presentation, ask yourself these questions. Because I think that what's important about knowing you have a resource if conflict or crisis happens, I think it's also important to look inside and figure out, because I have the opportunity to deal with conflict on a regular basis. So it's very normalized for me. I understand, how it affects my mood. I understand my boundaries. And so I've been able to build that. But as you move into this more challenging time in your academic career, I think it's important to identify what conflict looks like for you so that you can know how to set boundaries or when to step back, or perhaps when you might need an assist when it comes to conflict. Because some folks have no problem whatsoever just addressing conflict. They're very comfortable within it. Some folks are extremely adverse to conflict. So really, I want you to just take the moment, whether it's today, tomorrow, but please, before you get into your next conflict, to really think about a time where you were in conflict that was perhaps particularly unsettling, right? And ask yourself these questions. And this conflict could have been personal, could have been in a relationship, perhaps it's in a work environment, school environment, you were working on a team project, whatever it might be. And think about that conflict and what it was that you needed. Because obviously some need wasn't being met, therefore the conflict existed. So what was that need? And at any point during that conflict, were you able to express what it was that you needed? And perhaps you haven't thought about it until this moment. And then also, how did you react to the conflict? Did you shrink up and hide? Did you walk away so that you could take a moment and breathe? Did you face it head on? Did you need a few days to process? Just think about those things, because again, they're going to help you moving forward. How did you react? How did they react, right? Because if you come out of the gate very assertive in conflict, but you're dealing with someone who's conflict adverse and they shrink back, perhaps it's going to take that much more time to get to a point of finding some sort of compromise, or perhaps you'll never solve that conflict. And then ultimately, right, and not to say that the solution is you getting what you need always, because sometimes what you need might be selfish, or what you need isn't realistic. But the reality is, did you get what you needed in that conflict? I know for me personally, having been married for quite a number of years, I noticed that when conflict happens, for me, if my partner and I don't see eye to eye, oftentimes by the time we get to that place, I've completely switched into the mindset that they shared, and vice versa. So then it's much easier to get to compromise. But again, that comes with time and us understanding who we are in conflict. And just so you know, as a community, right, we know that conflict is going to happen, but because there are over 50,000 of us trying to engage in this particular community, we also have things that we put in place to try and avoid persistent conflict, because that would potentially disarm us and make it very difficult for us to move forward. Using the pandemic as an example, quite honestly, everything that we normally do is a bit in conflict because we can't do business as usual. And so it does feel like we are in persistent conflict, but some things do stay consistent. We have expectations, we have values, we have a code of conduct. We continue to try and build community, as hard as that is during a pandemic, but we're trying, right? We always need to find ways, whether that's through social events online, whether that's social distancing with friends in a park, whatever it might be, community is important. And then obviously modeling civility and accountability. And I put down that sometimes we do this better than other times. The reality is, I can't stand here and say that the University of Arizona always gets this right, but I will say that as an individual, civility and accountability are something that I hold dear. But like moving forward with mask compliance, a lot of concerns have come to me in terms of, will students be compliant with the mask policy? Well, if students aren't compliant, we have a very clear process for what can happen. Perhaps it'll start with a warning, but if a student persistently and knowingly puts others in danger by not following our policy, that student might be separated from campus. So it's not easy, but there's at least a clear path for what to do with students. And the question is, will we use that same accountability with staff and faculty? I certainly hope we will. It's outside of my jurisdictional authority, but we need to be consistent, and we need to make sure that as staff and faculty, we're held accountable at the same level as the expectation for students being held accountable. And obviously exercising empathy, using the mask policy again, right? Sometimes we'll be better at that than other times. Some folks might have an extreme reaction. You forget your mask one day, extreme reaction, it ends in conflict. Perhaps it'll be someone who then says, oh, faculty member, you forgot it. I happen to have some extra disposable masks. Just to be realistic, the reality is that people will make mistakes, and we need to exercise empathy when it's reasonable. If their mistakes end in great harm to our community, obviously our reaction may be very different, but the reality is we're all human, so empathy is part of that community building and part of the way that we prevent conflict. Because reacting to everything, no, everyone's not in the same mindset as you, so we have to be thoughtful about that. Now, I only have a half hour, so I really need to speed myself along here. So just know, conflict is still going to occur. What's important is that universally as a community, we don't ignore it, that we try and stay calm. Obviously, that's going to be easier sometimes than others, and that we take the time to listen to individuals. And so this is where, when this isn't happening, or you're not ready to have this happen, or you're not sure you're going to be met with this level of willingness to participate in conflict, we may be a good resource for you at that point. And so the ways that we work through this accountability piece, this building of community, we use our code of conduct. We're all responsible for our conduct, and we're the ones who adjudicate for students if there's a potential violation. It's all rule-based reasoning. If you have a complaint against another student, you bring that complaint forward. We do the evaluative process of what code items may have occurred. We give them a fair process, and then it could end in responsibility, or a dismissal of the case, similar to a criminal process, but it is by no means a criminal process. It's administrative with a burden of proof than more likely than not. Student assistance, again, that support, trying to get you through impact, make sure you have resources. So always ask for help here if you don't know where to go. Student assistance is a place that can be central location for all resources, right? You're struggling with financial aid and mental health, and there's a crisis at home. If you come here, we'll try and help you with all of those different elements, as well as give you the self-efficacy to take the steps you want to take to get to success. Behavioral intervention team, I mentioned suicide ideation is a persistent concern for our student population. And so our behavioral intervention team is interdisciplinary, involves our office, counseling and psych services, housing staff, UAPD, Disability Resource Center. So we all get together on a weekly basis, focusing in on a core of students who are experiencing high-level concern, and we try and make sure we're giving them all the resources, trying to think creatively of how to get them through to academic success during that crisis. So know that we will focus in our attention every single week on probably 9 to 13 students out of the greater 44,000, just to make sure they're getting what they need for success. And as I mentioned, lots of bias reporting coming through. We've had bias reporting in the past. There is always question as to whether or not we're impinging on folks' First Amendment rights when we're evaluating that bias. And we know that we are going to be processing those appropriately. By all means, First Amendment is always at the forefront of our mind, but we also think it's important that we give folks a place to put that reporting so that we can help them process, we can figure out accountability, all of those things. So we are growing this again in a new iteration. The Bias Education and Support Team will be a team of 5 folks who process all of that reporting, help with the education and support of those impacted, as well as those who might be responsible for creating an unwelcoming environment on our campus. So know that that's under development. You will have the ability to report any concerns that you have to our office, as you would with code of conduct, as you would with concerns for a student who may be experiencing a crisis. But it's still in development, so know too that that website will be up and running with the start of school, so that you can take a look at what we're doing to try and be ahead of all of these concerns that are coming up for our campus. And then the threat assessment team I mentioned, we have to keep an eye not only on our students, but the outside community, staff, faculty, make sure that everyone here is safe at all times. So our threat assessment team works through that. Accountability, again, I don't want to belabor the point, but again, we have a code of conduct. We use our rule-based reasoning to determine whether or not there's potential violations of the code, and if so, what would be appropriate educational sanctioning, unless we believe that there's a concern for the health and safety of our community, at which point separation from campus is an opportunity that we can take advantage of so that we can maintain the order of the institution. Now, I really wanted to make sure and spend a moment too, because I've talked a lot about this First Amendment piece, and I want to show you a video that we've put together just so that folks are aware of what First Amendment looks like on campus, online for our students. And as students in the College of Law, I imagine that hopefully we have some constitutional scholars among us who will at least take this as a first step to understanding being a land-grant institution is a unique opportunity and one that comes with a responsibility. So I'm going to show this video to you, and then we'll go from there.
I'm the president of the Arizona Board of Regents. People need to understand that they aren't necessarily going to be immune to ideas that offend them, but it doesn't mean that students have to accept that that's the way that they need to think, and that's part of what the university experience is about, is finding your own way, finding your own voice.
I am part of the University of Arizona Dean of Students initiative around educating on the First Amendment, an initiative called Speak Your Piece, or hashtag Speak Your Piece. There are limitations that the Constitution and the First Amendment offer and legal precedent has set in ways in which there's protected and unprotected speech. So when we look at speech that's not protected, threats are a good example of that. So if I directly threaten to harm someone, threats are not protected.
Preachers do have the opportunity to come on campus and speak freely on the mall and express themselves. I personally have seen a few my freshman and sophomore year here. It bothered me. I didn't want to stand there and listen to that. I didn't want to believe what they were saying was true about my community or my fraternity.
If students, faculty, staff, or community members have questions about holding a protest or rally on campus, about what's protected versus unprotected speech, they can call the Dean of Students office and we're happy to talk with them about that. We also have a wonderful resource in #SpeakYourPiece. That's an online resource that lists lots of information about the First Amendment at the University of Arizona.
Lately, there's been a lot of conversation nationally about campus climate. We strongly believe that we are to help students learn how to think. We're not there to tell them what to think. The point is to make sure that students are exposed to a range of thinking and diversity of philosophies. And then they are also given the skills, the ability to think critically and to understand the methods of inquiry so that they can come to their own conclusions and be able to think freely on their own.
As I told my fellow senators on Wednesday, I believe this resolution is important, but I believe it's a necessary first step. I believe that we're going to be challenged a lot, not only in this next year, in the next 4 years, and that as students, now we're going to have to play our part and get civically engaged in order to solve these problems.
Well, that's part of that dialogue. I think it's incumbent upon all educators to present two points of view about any topic and every topic.
We've had a number of events here, and we have different kinds of events that are open to the public or not open to the public that represent a range of viewpoints.
We talk about this marketplace of ideas, and I think that's how we can come to understand the truth a lot better. From all corners of the world, I think they come to the university, engage in civil dialogue and civil discourse, aligning with the trajectory with our First Amendment rights.
The First Amendment opened up the possibility of people being exposed to many different viewpoints and ideas with this freedom of expression. At a large public institution like this, people from all different backgrounds and walks of life and religions and ethnicities, international students, students from all over the country come together. It's an exciting time and a time when they really appreciate the opportunity to think through what it all means and to put it into historical context.
When we went to the military, raised our right hand to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And so that's something we all hold very dear to us, that everyone has and is afforded that opportunity, especially when you start talking about the First Amendment, to express their beliefs and their opinions, even when it's something that may make folks uncomfortable or may not be a popular opinion.
People think that they have the right to not hear opinions that they don't like, and that's going to really damage them in the long run. They want to sit in their safe spaces, they want to create a bubble, but when they get into the real world and start hearing that not everyone agrees with them and start seeing that there is a difference in opinions, they're going to get eaten alive.
I feel like open discussion is always good. You don't have to always agree with somebody because it is infringing on somebody if you tell them to not speak.
Freedom of speech isn't just speech. It might be writing that you've done. In the era of social media, we often see people making comments that are also protected speech. They have the same protections as a spoken word. It might be a poster or a posting, or it could be something you wear. So all of those would be considered different forms of speech. So it doesn't just have to be something you say in spoken word.
You have social media or avenues that can tailor specific viewpoints to your devices or to the way you read the news. Professors can use lectures or classroom discussions to get multiple perspectives to reach a greater truth or understanding of the issues and to get the underlying facts without the bias, without this background noise that oftentimes surrounds the delivery of news.
People have the right to exercise free speech in our outdoor spaces on campus as long as they aren't disruptive to our educational environment, to the university business, and to planned activities that we have on campus. The University of Arizona is committed to protecting the free speech rights of students, faculty, staff, and guests on our campus.
I believe if you inhibit the right of free speech, it's not a slippery slope, it's a cliff that you don't want to go down.
The freedom of speech, and everybody should have their own voice and their own opinions. Though people might not agree on certain topics, it's definitely your opinion, it's what you believe in.
So I wanted to take that opportunity to share that video with you, and obviously it's available online if you want to take a look at it again. And then just lastly, I want to make sure that you know a little bit about where you can report in terms of our office. So just know that we have an online reporting form. So again, if you have experienced any concerns related to a bias incident, if you have concerns for the well-being of a fellow student, if you believe that you have a complaint against another student, this is a reporting. If you go online and it says, it'll ask you the question, whether or not you want to report a student of concern, whether or not you believe that you have a conduct complaint against someone. And then again, at this time, the bias education and support team is under development, but that will also be linked in to our forms online. So you can also give us a call, obviously 520-621-7057. I encourage you all to go to deanofstudents.arizona.edu, take a look at the resources we have available, but also if at any point you're feeling as if there are concerns for your well-being, or if you're experiencing any food insecurity, financial insecurity, our office is one of the opportunities for you to get engaged here on campus and learn about how we can help. So know too, our food pantry is remaining open regardless of what stage of the re-entry plan we're in. And we have our student emergency fund, which I encourage you to apply for. And if you're eligible for any CARES Act funding from the federal government, we will also work on helping get you that money as well. So thank you for the time. Hopefully this video at least offered some insight. Obviously didn't answer all your questions, but please don't hesitate to let me know if you have any questions moving forward. And again, good luck on your experience, and do not ever hesitate to call us if you have questions or concerns. Take care, everybody.